Senator Bernie Sanders is the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee in the Senate and joins me now from Burlington, Vermont. Senator, thank you very much. What is your solution? There have been those calling for Shinseki's resignation. There's been calls for a complete shakeup. Let's stipulate that this did not start now or last year or the year before. This is a long-standing problem with the VA.
Well, let's look at what the allegations are right now that are being investigated by the Inspector General. There are serious allegations that in VA facilities around the country, what people are doing is saying, writing down reports, that veterans are getting health care within the 2-week standard for new applications, getting into the system in 2 weeks, when in fact it may be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or even longer. And Andrea, that is totally unacceptable. And we've got to deal with that. The more important point to be asked is, how do we make sure that every veteran in this country gets the high-quality health care that he or she needs in a timely manner? And what has got to be said about that, if you ask the veterans organizations, if you ask veterans all over the country, as I have, if you look at independent surveys, the truth is that once people get in to the VA system, the care that they are getting is pretty high quality. Most veterans are pretty happy with the care that they're getting. The difficulty that we have right now is that as a result of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, in recent years, we have seen 2 million more veterans getting into the system. And the question that we have to ask is, does the VA have the resources, have the doctors, have the nurses to provide timely, quality care to all of the people who are now in the system? And by the way, many of the new people who are coming into the system are dealing with PTSD, TBI, very difficult health issues. So that's the most important issue that we have got to deal with, and we're working on legislation right now that will begin to address some of these issues.
I want to ask you about a letter from Senator Richard Burr, your Republican committee member, who's criticizing veterans groups who have divided on whether or not Shinseki is the problem. Is this helpful in reaching a solution?
Well, I think that's something you have to ask Senator Burr about. I can simply tell you that I have worked since I've been chairman very closely with the American Legion, the DAV, the VFW, the Vietnam Vets, all of the veterans organizations. And I find them to be extremely knowledgeable about the problems that are facing the veterans community. And Andrea, let me tell you something. What these guys have done through a program called the Independent Budget, they assess the needs of veterans, they assess the funding that the VA is getting. What they have said year after year, and I have agreed with them and tried to get more funding, is the VA does not have the that they need. But by and large, I think their track record in Washington in terms of fighting for new educational opportunities for veterans, for a caregiver program, which is just revolutionary in what it's trying to do, they have a good record. They are serious people. I enjoy working with them.
Is what the administration announced in recent days the right quick fix, which is that if there is more than a 2-week waiting period, that vets can then go into the other part of the system, to regular other hospitals, until they can get into the VA. And I take your point that all the veterans I speak to as well, and you have far more experience than I, they like the care they're getting from the veterans, from the VA, from the system. The problem is the backlog, or the biggest problem is the backlog.
Well, Andrea, I think that what the president is suggesting is a reasonable idea, except the problem is more complicated than it looks even there. All over this country, we have a major crisis in, say, primary health care. We do not have enough primary health care physicians. So it's not quite so easy to say to a veteran, well, you're waiting to get into the VA, go into your community, you got to get in the next day. Not necessarily the case, but I think it may be a good, at least temporary step. Second of all, we have community health centers, federally funded community health centers all over this country, which do a great job, primary health care. You have the Indian Health Service, you have Department of Defense facilities. We might want to open them up to veterans if there are waiting lines within the VA itself. But the bottom line here, I would hope that as a country, is that we fully understand the cost of war. And Andrea, let me tell you, I think many people do not. We're not just talking about the thousands of people who died in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're talking about 200,000 men and women who came home with PTSD and TBI. We're talking about people who came home without legs, without arms, without hearing, without eyesight. And if this country stands for anything, what we have got to say is that we are going to provide adequate funding to make sure that every person who is entitled to those health care services gets the best health that they can, and they get it in a timely manner.
Senator Sanders, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. And Nigerian officials are claiming that they know where the terror group Boko Haram has hidden the 276